السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني أن أرحب بكم جميعا في النسخة 14 من أسبوع أبو ظبي للاستدامة. وبداية أود أن أتقدم حفظه الله ورعاه على رعايته الكريمة لأسبوع أبو ظبي للاستدامة. أن رعاية سموه لهذا الحدث تؤكد للعالم أجمع التزام دولة الإمارات بدورها الريادي للتحديات البيئية وتعزيز الجهود الدولية لتحقيق التوازن بين التنمية الاقتصادية مع الحفاظ على الموارد البيئية والموارد الطبيعية، كما أن دعمه المستمر. أيها الحضور الكرام، اتفقت مخرجات أبو ظبي أسبوع أبو ظبي للاستدامة على مر السنوات أن الاستدامة هي الركيزة الأساسية لتحقيق التوازن بين تلبية احتياجات الطاقة المتزايدة وإدارة الموارد الطبيعية لتحقيق هدف واحد، وهو هدف الازدهار والنمو المستدام. ولعل أهم هذه الموارد هو الماء، ذلك العنصر البسيط جدا في تكوينه، لكنه يظل أعظم معجزة منحت للبشرية. إنه شريان الحياة، وهو أساس الحضارات، وهو ما يربط بين الإنسان والطبيعة وبين مجتمعات اليوم ومستقبل الغد. ومع ذلك فإن هذا المورد الثمين يواجه تحديات غير مسبوقة على مستوى العالم. ففي كل يوم يستيقظ أكثر من 2 مليار إنسان وهم يواجهون صعوبة في الحصول على أبسط متطلبات الحياة وهي الماء، وأكثر من 1 مليار شخص يومياً يفتقرون إلى إمكانية الوصول إلى مياه الشرب. وتشير الإحصائيات الحديثة من مختلف المعاهد والدراسات أن هذه الفجوة في تنامي، فبحلول 2030 أي فقط 5 سنوات من اليوم سيعيش نصف سكان العالم في مناطق تعاني نقص المياه، وسوف يزداد هذا التنافس على الموارد المائية مع تزايد التحضر والنمو السكاني والتغير المناخي. هذه الحقائق أيها السادة ليست مجرد أرقام، بل هي دعوة صريحة لنا جميعاً للعمل الآن. السيدات والسادة، هنا في أبو ظبي مواجهة التحديات المناخية والمائية وإيجاد حلول لها هو جزء من واقعنا اليوم الذي نعيشه. تعلمنا أن مواجهة الصعوبات ليست خيار، بل هي ضرورة استلهمناها من قيادتنا الرشيدة ورؤيتهم الطموحة التي تسعى إلى تحويل هذه التحديات إلى فرص. ومن خلال الاستثمار في التكنولوجيا والابتكار وقبل ذلك في الإنسان حققنا إنجازات مثلى في هذا المجال من ناحية توفير المياه بل وضمان استدامتها، حيث تمتلك أبو ظبي اليوم أكبر محطة تنقية مياه بتقنية التناضح العكسي مخفضة الكربون في العالم، وتنتج أكثر من 10 مليون متر مكعب يومياً. كما أننا نملك مشاريع التخزين الاستراتيجي في منطقة ريوة، وواحد من هذه المشاريع. إضافة إلى ذلك اسمحوا لي أن أذكر جائزة إكسبرايز المياه التي أطلقت تحت مظلة مبادرة محمد بن زايد للماء، حيث تهدف الجائزة لتحفيز العنصر الإنساني بدعم الابتكار في تقنية تحلية المياه وتوفير المياه النظيفة للمجتمعات التي تعاني من ندرة المياه. وكذلك قمنا بنجاح من تحقيق بوادر وتسليمات استراتيجية أبو ظبي للمياه في عام 2030، وبالفعل قد تحققت العديد من هذه المخرجات، ونحن في نسق الوصول إن شاء الله إلى هدف توفير استهلاك الكهرباء بنسبة 22% والماء بنسبة تزيد عن 30%. لكننا ندرك أن الطريق أمامنا لا يزال طويلاً، فالمياه ليست مسألة تقنية أو اقتصادية، بل هي قضية إنسانية وأخلاقية. علينا أن نعمل جميعاً بروح الفريق، وعلينا أن نستوعب أن هذه المسؤولية المشتركة لضمان توفير المياه لنا وللأجيال القادمة هي مسؤولية الجميع. إن الاستدامة ليست مجرد شعار، بل هي التزام جماعي يتطلب تفكيراً جريئاً، وفوق ذلك كله أفعالاً حاسمة. هنا من أبو ظبي، أرض الفرص، أرض الحلول، أرض اللا مستحيل. واليوم من منصة أسبوع أبو ظبي للاستدامة، هذه المنصة الاستباقية التي تجمع الخبراء وصناع القرار والمبتكرين ورواد الأعمال. أدعوكم أن تتخذوا هذا الحدث التقدمي كفرصة لإيجاد الحلول لهذه التحديات وتحقيق التوازن بين النمو الاقتصادي وحماية الموارد البيئية للوصول إلى مخرجات الاستدامة. بهذا الأسبوع نسعى إلى وضع الماء على رأس أولوياتنا. أيها الحضور الكريم، في الإمارات نؤمن بأن القيادة الحقيقية تكمن في اتخاذ خطوات جريئة نحو المستقبل، ومن هنا نرى أن دورنا لا يقتصر على تحقيق الاستدامة كمبدأ وأسلوب حياة في داخل حدودنا الجغرافية فقط، بل يشمل أيضاً المشاركة في المجهود العالمي. لهذا السبب نفخر بأن تكون أبو ظبي اليوم مركزاً عالمياً للحوار وللعمل بشأن قضايا الماء والطاقة والاستدامة. أن التحديات التي نواجهها اليوم لنا جميعاً توجب علينا جميعاً أن نكون جزءاً من هذا الحل. إنها فرصة لنثبت للعالم أن بالإمكان تحويل هذه التحديات إلى فرص، وأن التحديات ليست نهاية الطريق، بل هي بداية لرحلة جديدة نحو مستقبل أفضل. دعونا جميعاً نتعهد معاً بأن نضع المياه واستدامتها في صميم أولوياتنا، وأن نعمل لتحقيق ما نطمح إليه. ختاماً، أود أن أعبر عن شكري وتقديري لكل من ساهم في تنظيم هذا الحفل والحدث العالمي، ولكل من حضر ليكون جزءاً من هذا الحوار البناء. إننا نؤمن بأن التغيير يبدأ بفكرة، لكن الأفكار تظل أفكار ولا تنجح إلا إذا دعمناها بالأفعال. دعونا نكمل المسيرة التي بدأها الوالد المؤسس الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان طيب الله ثراه من أبو ظبي وللعالم، لصنع مستقبل نفخر به جميعاً. معاً نستطيع أن نحمي الحياة ونبني المستقبل ونترك إرثاً عظيماً للأجيال القادمة. قطرة اليوم حياة للغد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Many thanks, Your Excellency, for your opening remarks. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage His Excellency Bola Tinubu, President of Nigeria. Your Excellency, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by extending my deepest gratitude to the President of the United Arab Emirates, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed bin Sultan Nahyan, for inviting me to this Abu Dhabi Sustainable Week. I thank the government and good people of Abu Dhabi for their generous hospitality and foresight in organizing this event. This week, leaders from all over the world come together to exchange views and perspectives on how we can collectively address the global challenges of our time. The topic assigned to me for discussion is climate imperatives into economic prosperity, bridging African with global energy future. This topic resonates deeply with Africa's aspirations and challenges. It also underscores a pivotal reality about our dear continent. The fight against climate change is not merely an environmental necessity, but a global economic opportunity to reshape the trajectory of our continent and the global energy landscape. As leaders, stakeholders, and citizens of our planet, we stand at a crucial and critical junction in human history. To succeed, we must innovate, collaborate, and decisively collaborate as a global community. As Africa's most populous nation and one of its largest economies, Nigeria recognizes its responsibility to demonstrate the required leadership on these matters. We have embraced a vision of sustainability that aligns with global aspiration while addressing the local realities. Our efforts are anchored on 3 pillars: energy transition, climate resilience, and sustainable development. My administration, we recognize this problem from the word get-go, from its inception. We recognize the importance of reducing carbon emission and a just transition to clean and renewable energy, promoting environmental sustainability and economic growth. Energy transition, dear delegates and all the excellencies, our energy transition plan, like many nations, are aimed at diversifying energy sources and reducing our dependency on fossil fuel. Prioritizing the transition to cleaner energy sources as a cornerstone of our national development strategy. Nigeria is committed to achieving a net zero emission by 2060, in line with global climate objectives. We are developing the infrastructure to utilize compressed natural gas and electric vehicles. Nigeria also is investing substantially in energy generation through exploration of efficient and internationally satisfied data required to export our solid mineral and critical metal in support of the green energy transition. Climate resiliency must be achieved. Building resiliency against the adverse effects of climate change is essential for safeguarding our African communities and economies. Nigeria is implementing climate-smart agricultural practices to enhance food security while reducing environmental impacts. The government has approved several developmental policies such as National Clean Cooking Gas Policy, which is aimed at promoting clean energy, environment, and health benefit and socio-economic development in our region. We believe the sustainable development must be inclusive. We are therefore working tirelessly to ensure that our policies promote equity and social justice leaving no one behind. Challenges versus opportunities in Nigeria, yes, there are, and there will continue to be challenges. But how do you mitigate that? We face serious challenges, environmental challenges, including deforestation, desertification, coastal erosion, flooding, pollution, and many other negative impacts of climate change. Lake Chad continues to shrink every year. Livelihood of people continue to be threatened. Our government is working with local communities to implement solutions to mitigate these effects and help us build resilience in the face of environmental challenges. For resources, to promote a green economy in Africa, we must focus on integrating sustainable practices in all sectors of our economy. These investments are capital intensive in nature, and it required international support from partner countries, including multinational organizations. Developmental partners and individuals who shared our vision of a sustainable, prosperous, and equitable future must be included. Nigeria became the first country in Africa to initiate funding for green projects through sovereign green bond proceeds, the third issuance of which is currently in progress. We urge investors to partner with us in this regard. Our government remains committed to providing an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Harnessing technology and innovation is key to driving sustainable development. We agree. Nigeria is increasingly embracing new technologies like clean energy, water conservation, land and forest restoration, waste management, and circular economy. We will partner with global leaders in harnessing the power of technology. We are finding new and innovative ways to address our environmental challenges. We have arable agricultural lands for advanced technological farming, including a brighter future for artificial intelligence. Global collaborations are challenges that we must overcome. And global solution will only be effective if we work together in the spirit of mutual respect and a shared future. Nigerian government believes that sustainable development is not just a national issue, but a global imperative. We must continue to strengthen international cooperation at regional and global levels to achieve the sustainable developmental goals and mitigate the effects of climate change. Dear esteemed delegates, I would like to stress here, in addition to everything you've heard in the last few days, the most impactful image that I'm taking away from here with your support is the impact of those children that on the first day waved the banner of United Emirates Republic, asking us, all of us, to stand up, sustain the planet Earth for the future that we want to bequeath unto them. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring and invaluable remarks with us today. Also with us today, it's a great honor to welcome His Excellency Yoweri Museveni, the President of Uganda. Your Excellency, over to you.
Your Highness, the Crown Prince, Your Excellencies, the heads of state who are here, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, and leaders of delegations. First of all, I want to thank His Excellency, President of the UAE, for inviting me a number of times and coming here with my delegation to participate in discussing these global issues. The topic I was given was transforming Uganda in a rising East Africa. Uganda has got a population of 46 million people and is part of the East African community with a combined population of 300 million people, all of whom are part of the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area of Africa, with a combined population of 1.4 billion people. Until 1900, Uganda was part of Africa that had limited direct linkages with outsiders. Indeed, the first non-black person to come to Uganda was an Arab man from Zanzibar, known as Ibrahim. At that time, our economy was pre-industrial, pre-capitalist, and pre-socialist, and traditional. The traditional African economy of that area was based on subsistence agriculture with quite a spectrum of artisan skills, such as blacksmith, carpentry, ceramics, etc. In the 70 years the British were in Uganda, typical of the colonies, they created a small enclave economy of the 3 C's and 3 T's. Enclave economy meant a small island of money economy surrounded by a sea of underdevelopment and moneylessness. The 3 C's were coffee, cotton, and copper, and the 3 T's were tea, tobacco, and tourism. By 1962, that is independence time, only 9% of the homesteads were in this small money economy. Owing to the wrong politics of the political actors, Uganda soon entered a period of crisis. In 1971, an illiterate colonial sergeant, Idi Amin, came into power. He ruined the small enclave economy by making many mistakes, including the expulsion of our immigrant Asian community of 80,000 that had been a part of the entrepreneurial class. By 1986, only coffee of the 3 C's was surviving, and only tobacco of the 3 C's was still kicking. Since that time, we have gone through 5 phases as follows. 1, bring back part of the small island of the 3 C's and 3 T's. 2, expand the island, more coffee, more tea, more tourism. 3, diversify the economy by commercializing new products such as fruits, bananas, fish, dairy products, beef, sugar, cassava, leather, wood products, etc. 4, add value to some of the raw materials such as textiles, dairy products, sugar, so that you produce finished products. 5, enter the knowledge economy by producing products of the intellect, such as automobiles, vaccines, etc. However, to go into the 5 phases, apart from peace, you need infrastructure and a skilled and healthy population. We have therefore invested in electricity generation, roads constructions, building schools and health centers. These modest efforts have seen the economy grow from a miserable $4 billion in 1986 to now $55 billion by the foreign exchange rate method, or $168.5 billion by the PPP method. We are not satisfied with this. Much of this $55 billion is raw materials. By merely adding value to a spectrum of these raw materials, such as coffee, cereals, minerals, etc., we intend to grow the economy to $500 billion in the coming few years. We therefore invite investors from the world to come and help us to do this rapid transformation of our economy and society, as they also benefit because the internal rate of return in Uganda is 14.1%. This is when we still have high transport costs and also some high cost of electricity. Once we build the railway, a modern railway to the ocean, the internal rate of return will be much higher than this. You can compare this internal rate of return with what you get in other areas. Uganda now is classified as a lower middle income country. It will, however, rapidly grow into a high middle income country and eventually into a first world country. To achieve these goals, as already stated, we need to add value to the large spectrum of our agricultural raw materials: coffee, bananas, fruits, cotton, oilseeds, cassava, maize, tea, dairy, beef, poultry products, fish, forest products, sugar, etc., and mineral raw materials such as gold, iron ore, phosphates, lithium, uranium, petroleum, gas, etc. The efforts of value addition to raw materials are part of sector 2 of the economy. This is manufacturing. The other sectors are commercial agriculture, that will generate some of the required raw materials, services such as tourism, hospitality, transport, professional services, etc., and ICT. I salute our African brothers and sisters in East Africa and in the whole continent. With clear vision, we agreed that when you produce a good or a service, you need to sell that good. The more you sell, the better for our prosperity. The internal market of Uganda, of 46 million people, is not enough to support large-scale sustained production of goods and services, especially when their purchasing power is still low. Already, Uganda has got surplus of many products: maize, milk, beef, bananas, steel products, cement, tubes and tires, textiles, cassava products, etc., etc. How would the Ugandan economy grow if we do not have the East African market? If we do not have the COMESA market? COMESA is Common Market of Central and East Southern Africa, and the wider African market under the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area. I would like, therefore, to assure investors from outside that the Africans have already laid down a lucrative market for investment by having a common market, the CFTA of the whole of Africa. When you invest in Uganda or any brother African countries, you have the assurance of this huge and growing market. The population of Africa will be 2.5 billion in the next 25 years. The population of Uganda will be 106 million in the next 25 years. What many people in the world do not know is that Africa, the origin of man, because all of you are former Africans if you don't know it, has been underpopulated for much of the 4.5 million years of human history, ever since the evolution of the Homo sapiens sapien. This was because Africa is good for man, but has also been good for man's enemies, such as mosquitoes, the tsetse flies, the microbes, etc., until recently, when modern science has enabled us to suppress these enemies of man. Africa is 12 times the size of India. You can put India 12 times into Africa and it will fit there, in land area, and with a lot of natural resources. However, India has been having a bigger population than Africa until recently. It's now that we have overtaken India and China for the first time in population size. The growth of Africa is now unstoppable. future leadership in prosperity belongs to Africa without a doubt, as long as we are acting right. As a third-generation anti-colonial freedom fighter from Africa, attending this gathering, I cannot end my remarks without commenting on the chaos and criminality that has been going on in the world, but in particular in the last 600 years. All sorts of criminalities have been committed by bankrupt, greedy, evil, but also ignorant actors. These actors make philosophical mistakes, they make ideological mistakes, they make strategic mistakes. To build global affluence and prosperity, these mistakes are not necessary. That's why I want to congratulate the UAE, especially the founder, Sheikh Zayed, for his vision of win-win vision. We are tired of the parasitism of some of the actors. And that's why we say they are ignorant. Because if you are not fair, people will resist you. And that's what Africa did. And I am here as a third generation leader, fighter of Africa. The first generation was in 1912, when the ANC of South Africa was founded, to fight colonialism. People had colonized us. Imagine colonizing Africa. What are you thinking properly or what? You leave your home, you come to my home. That was the first generation, 1912. The African National Congress was founded in South Africa. The second generation are in the 1940s. People like Nkrumah, Mwalimu Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, many other leaders. And we are the third generation, we who came in the 1960s. So therefore, we are saying that these endless philosophical, ideological, strategic mistakes are not necessary. The world can be very prosperous when we work together in a win-win way. That's why I salute Sheikh Zayed for from what I have heard. We did not know much about the UAE. In the 1960s, we were working more with North Africa, with Egypt, Nasser, with Algeria. Gaddafi had come, Libya. Then I went to fight Idi Amin from 1971. When I came back, I heard of a place called Dubai. I have never heard of Dubai. People are coming to Dubai, to buy things from Uganda. They were no longer going to UK. I did not come here until 2014 when some of my people linked me with you. So I'm very happy to know the good work of Sheikh Zayed, the one of win-win approach. I congratulate you on that. The mistake makers compare the victims to resist, and hence the victims, the conflicts. There should be a forum to discuss this squandering of human potential by parasites We believe in win-win solutions to human problems. I thank everybody.
Many thanks, Your Excellency, for your optimism and for your conviction. Please join me now in welcoming His Excellency Wavel Ramkalawan, the President of Seychelles. Thank you.
Your Highness Sheikh Khaled bin Mohammed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, fellow African heads of state, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure and privilege to stand before you today at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit. I represent the Seychelles, a proud island developing state with a vision for sustainability. This summit is an opportunity for Seychelles to share its experiences, its challenges, and its aspirations with global leaders, innovators, and change makers who are united here in Abu Dhabi by a shared commitment to sustainability. Allow me to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the UAE, for the kind invitation to participate in this distinguished forum. I also extend my deep appreciation to the organizers of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week for creating a platform where collaboration, innovation, and bold ideas converge to address the pressing challenges of our time. Seychelles, as you all probably know, is a small island state of unparalleled beauty, a haven for biodiversity, and a beacon for sustainable development. Our pristine beaches, vibrant marine ecosystems, and endemic species represent not only a treasure for our people, but a shared heritage for all of humanity. Yet, this paradise faces existential threats from a crisis to which we have contributed almost nothing, and this is climate change. Rising sea levels and ocean warming are devastating our marine ecosystems. Coral reefs, vital to our food security, tourism, and cultural identity, are bleaching and dying. Fragile ecosystems like our seagrass meadows, which store millions of tons of carbon dioxide, are at risk. For the people of Seychelles, the ocean is more than just a resource. It is our lifeline, our identity, and our legacy. As a small island developing state, Seychelles is the smallest African country in terms of landmass. Despite its size, Seychelles is a global environmental champion, renowned for its commitment to biodiversity conservation and as host of 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Remarkably, 50% of Seychelles' terrestrial areas and 32% of its marine areas are under protection, showcasing its dedication to preserving natural resources. However, Seychelles faces unique challenges due to its limited, readily available land, constrained by its topography. This limitation significantly impacts the country's ability to expand renewable energy. As part of its national determined contribution, Seychelles has pledged to integrate 15% renewable energy into its energy mix by 2030, leveraging the abundance of sunshine throughout the year. Achieving a higher ambition of renewable energy with current technologies in Seychelles is a challenge, as I said, because of the scarcity of land. Yet, we are following development in technology, and with the help of Abu Dhabi through Sheikh Mohammed's generosity, we are exploring floating PV plants and developing a wind turbine farm that would produce over 20 megawatts of electricity. And these projects will become a real game changer. Excellencies, Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, Seychelles has long stood as a beacon of innovation in ocean governance and marine conservation. From pioneering the world's first sovereign blue bonds to implementing the groundbreaking debt for nature swap, our nation has consistently demonstrated that small islands can lead big initiatives. These financial mechanisms have not only helped to protect vital marine ecosystems, but also position Seychelles as a global leader in sustainable ocean management. Recognizing the potential of these mechanisms, Seychelles is now exploring ways to adapt them to mitigate some of the risks associated with marine renewable energy development. This will make investments in the sector more viable, helping us achieve our goal of sustainability and energy security. Today, as we gather under the theme, The Nexus of Next, Supercharging Sustainable Progress, we are called to envision how Seychelles' innovative spirit can further accelerate the development of marine renewable energy while preserving the health of our oceans. With the world's attention turning to cleaner energy sources, the ocean offers immense potential. Technologies like offshore wind farms, tidal energy, and floating photovoltaic systems are advancing at an unprecedented pace. Seychelles, with its large exclusive economic zone and rich marine biodiversity, has a unique opportunity to harness these innovations to meet our energy security needs. However, this opportunity comes with a profound responsibility. Seychelles is not just a custodian of its waters, but a steward of global marine heritage. Our seagrass meadows, coral reefs, and mangroves are not only critical carbon sinks, but also sanctuaries for countless marine species. Balancing energy development with marine conservation requires a careful, science-driven approach. By aligning energy infrastructure development with comprehensive environmental assessments, we aim to safeguard the ecosystems that underpin our blue economy. Moreover, beyond energy security and environmental stewardship, we strongly believe that the transition to a blue economy must deliver inclusive benefits for our people, particularly for our coastal communities that depend on traditional marine livelihoods. For Seychelles, the blue economy is not merely an abstract concept. It is a vision of equitable development where no one is left behind. We therefore aspire to ensure that marine renewable energy projects include opportunities for local capacity building, job creation, and community engagement. Coastal communities, often the first to experience the impacts of climate change, must also be the first to benefit from solutions that build resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, Seychelles' journey demonstrates that innovation and conservation are not opposing forces, they are complementary. At this 2025 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, we are reminded that the future of sustainability lies at the nexus of bold innovation, collective action, and a shared commitment to leaving no one behind. As I conclude, let us reflect on the words of Sylvia Earle, a renowned marine biologist and oceanographer, and a dear friend who once said, "With every drop of water you drink, every breath you take, you're connected to the sea, no matter where on earth you live." These words remind us that the ocean is not only the heartbeat of Seychelles, but also crucial for the well-being of our planet. Our aspirations for sustainable and inclusive blue economy are not just for ourselves, they are for the generations to come and for a healthier planet. Together, let us work to turn these aspirations into reality. Seychelles stands ready to continue leading by example, proving that small nations can inspire global change. With unity, innovation, and determination, I believe that our shared vision for a brighter future will be achieved. I thank you.
Many thanks, Your Excellency, for the impact and beauty of your words. Next, it's now a great honor to welcome His Excellency Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania.
Very honorable participants and dear friends, it's with great honor that I take the floor to present what is shaping not just Albania's future, but specifically what in this moment in time Albania's future is being shaped by advancing clean energy and strengthening international partnerships, specifically with the United Arab Emirates. And let me express my deepest gratitude to His Highness, the President of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, for his continuous support, his special care, and the inspiration he has been for me and for us in this way forward, where together with and thanks to the United Arab Emirates and its incredible know-how in the matter, we are diversifying and transforming Albania's energy sector. Let me inform you that Albania electricity generation is, as we speak, 100% from renewable generation. And Albania's renewable energy share in final energy demand amounts to 44%. This makes Albania part of
the top list of the European countries, together with Scandinavian countries, in terms of how much the renewable energy share in final energy demand is as a number. On the other hand, I want to take this opportunity to inform you that we are today soon signing a very important strategic agreement together with Italy and the United Arab Emirates for the subsea cable that is mentioned to be a very, very important tool, not just for transmitting renewable energy from Albania to Italy, but also for increasing Albania's capacity as a key player in the region based on its 100% renewable production. And this very important step for the region and also for Europe would not have been possible without the significant collaboration with the United Arab Emirates and without the particular attention of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and also without someone that I want to mention because he has been instrumental in guiding us in this journey, Dr. Sultan Al-Jabr. Without taking longer, I want to underline that Albania's partnership with the United Arab Emirates in the energy sector is very, very important for a region where a lot of wars, a lot of conflicts, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of misunderstandings have shaped so far our past, and where the collaboration and the common desire to be part of the big European family has to be sustained with concrete initiatives and with concrete steps to overcome the past. And in that regard, the collaboration started between the state-owned company of energy generation, Cash in Albania, and Masdar, which aims to develop up to 3 giga of renewable generation to be delivered through a well-organized and integrated transmission grid in the European market, of course, starting from the region, is a very, very important contribution, not just to the energy, but to peace and collaboration in the region in a way that we want all together, as I said, to end by uniting with the European Union family. And let me finish by expressing my gratitude also to someone that just entered the room, and you all rightly stood up, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who is here to participate in this fantastic week of sustainability, but also to bless this very important agreement between Italy, United Arab Emirates, and Albania. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Your Excellency. Indeed, we have the great pleasure today to welcome Her Excellency Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Well, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I have accepted with great pleasure President Mohammed bin Zayed and the United Arab Emirates government's invitation to join this summit, as I deem it very helpful and extremely valuable to multiply the opportunities for debate, for dialogue on the best solutions we can put at the service of such an historic challenge as energy transition is. We do know the international community has set itself very ambitious goals in this regard. The first global stocktake agreed at COP28 in Dubai under the Emirates presidency set goals that are still far from being achieved. But this must not frighten us or lead us to step back. However, it must certainly impose us to reason in new ways. On the one hand, overcoming the anachronistic division between developed nations and emerging ones, so as to share responsibilities and the undertaken path as much as possible. And on the other hand, rejecting the ideological approach to a subject that has nothing to share with ideology. We will not succeed in tripling the renewable energy generation capacity by 2030, nor in doubling the energy efficiency rate if we continue to chase decarbonization at the price of economic desertification, or to set aside for ideological reasons solutions that could instead help build a viable alternative to fossil fuels. We need to be pragmatic, simply because reality demands so. Estimates say the world population will reach 8.5 billion by 2030, and global GDP will double over the next decade. This will inexorably push up the demand for energy, not least due to the growing needs deriving from generative artificial intelligence development for increasingly sophisticated and high-performance algorithms require increasingly massive volumes of energy. Think about what happens every time we ask a question to an AI-based chatbot. The energy consumed is 15 times higher than for a simple online research. Already today, data centers consume about 1% of global power. This percentage is inevitably bound to rise, with growing demand on top of the demand traditionally coming from industry and manufacturing. The combination of these two factors will pull further pressure on electricity grids and energy infrastructures. The future of energy transition and digitization will thus depend on our ability to strike a balance between sustainability and innovation. We need a device-balanced energy mix based on the technologies we have in place, those we are experimenting with, and those yet to identify. I'm not only referring to renewable energies, but also to gas, biofuel, green hydrogen, and carbon dioxide capture, without forgetting nuclear fusion, which can potentially produce clean, safe, and moreover unlimited energy, and turn energy from a geopolitical weapon into a widely accessible resource, effectively changing history. Italy is playing its own part in this direction and thus hosted in Rome the first meeting of the World Group on Fusion Energy promoted by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Yet, if we want to make energy transition concrete and sustainable, we must ensure it is complemented with adequate infrastructures. And I am sure that developing interconnections can be the keystone of a new energy diplomacy to multiply opportunities for cooperations among us and generate shared benefits for all. With this approach, Italy stands to become the strategic hub for energy flows between Europe and Africa. We are a natural platform in the Mediterranean, and this enables us to act as a supply and distribution hub, matching both the existing and the potential supply from Africa with Europe's demand for energy. The Italian government is giving voice to this ambition also through the Mattei Plan, the cooperation plan with African countries that we launched, which embraces energy as one of its very pillars and also provides for strategic connection projects. I'm thinking of the Helmet power interconnection between Italy and Tunisia, a project co-financed by the World Bank and the European Union for a high voltage direct current 600 megawatt cable extending for around 220 kilometers. I'm also referring to the South H2 corridor for hydrogen transportation from North Africa to Central Europe via Italy, or the high potential projects we launched with the G7, within the G7 framework, such as the Energy for Growth in Africa, to encourage clean energy investments in the African continent. But the Mediterranean can become the space for building many other energy cooperation opportunities, both by strengthening existing projects and launching innovative ones. Italy is traditionally linked to Western Balkan nations, as my friendship with Prime Minister Edi Rama shows. And over time, these bonds have also resulted in energy infrastructure projects. I'm referring, for example, to the power interconnection stretching for 430 kilometers along the Adriatic seabed and linking Italy to Montenegro and the Balkan region, a strategic infrastructure which we aim to strengthen and make even more efficient and competitive. And we intend to pursue this direction. So I am remarkably glad, as Eddie did already, to announce here the signing of a tripartite strategic partnership framework to launch an equally ambitious project between the two shores of the Adriatic, with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed and Prime Minister Edi Rama, two good friends of mine, two good friends of Italy. Today we are going to attend the signing of an extremely important commitment to implement a new energy interconnection for producing green power in Albania and exporting part of that power to Italy, thanks to an undersea cable across the Adriatic Sea. We strongly believe in this project involving our three governments, as well as our private sector and grid operators. And I am personally proud of this initiative, because it tangibly shows new forms of cooperation can be built, even among seemingly distant partners, at least geographically speaking. Partners who, however, are able to see the chessboard as a whole, and not just the quadrant of that chessboard that apparently concerns them most closely. Thus, this initiative is a concrete step toward a truly global interconnection, from Asia to the Gulf, from North Africa to Europe, capable of supplying energy bidirectionally. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we know we are living in a particularly complex era, marked by momentous transformations. We now have a choice to make. We can either suffer these transformations while staying idle, or we can interpret them as opportunities. I strongly believe we should choose the second path and follow it courageously and visionarily, with no fear to dare. Because as the economist Julian Simon said, the main fuel to speed the world's progress is our stock of knowledge. The brakes are our lack of imagination. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Your Excellency Giorgia Meloni, for your address today and for joining us, of course. What a great privilege to be joined today by these world leaders and hear their views, their experiences, and their visions. We are truly honored that you were able to join us today. Please do stay with us and remain seated. Our program will resume very shortly. Thank you. Well, what a fantastic start to day 2 of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit 2025. Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, our program here at the summit continues with an insightful fireside chat on our health, our planet, a joint vision. With the global healthcare sector accounting for 5% of CO2 emissions, how do we, on the one hand, decarbonize the industry, while, on the other, address the profound impact of climate change on human health? Coming up next to discuss this and more, please welcome our moderator, Etna Trina. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, thank you so much for joining us here. And as we heard in all of those statements from world leaders, we're looking at transformation, but we really have to be looking at the health of the nations, the wealth of the nations, and ultimately the health of people. I'm very excited to be talking about this because it's probably one of the most important factors that we really do need to be examining, we need to be looking at, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me here the Chief Executive Officer of Reaching the Last Mile, Nassar Al-Mubarak. Lovely to see you and thank you for being with us. And Simon Bland, the CEO of the Global Institute for Defence Disease Elimination. So when we look at the impact of the health sector on climate change, on the environment, it's huge. But also we have to look then at the impact of the environment on health, on human health. And Simon, if I might start with you, we look at, I think, what we've been talking about for the last 2 days here, and every panel has talked about how important people are to the equation. But I think a lot of people have probably gotten maybe forgotten about around the world. And not everybody is sort of reaching ahead as fast as everyone else. And what's the danger of actually ignoring maybe sometimes, or just maybe not noticing, but the health of the planet? And if we don't get that right when we look at climate change, I think we're in trouble. What do you say? Give us a feel for where we are now.
So thanks, Etna. I mean, I think if you wanted to describe the situation, I'd say it's a little bit fragile right now, a little bit shaky. The World Health Organization identifies climate change as a fundamental threat to human health, and it threatens to reverse decades of progress. And it's clearly a clear and present danger now, and that danger is escalating. And we see the impacts through direct heat-related deaths and illness. We see it through air pollution and air quality. We see it through water and food production. We see infectious diseases affected by this. We see extreme weather events. And we see mental health consequences. So those impacts are clear and present and getting worse. But let me start by picking up from where Secretary Kerry spoke yesterday, which was about amazing progress that has been made. Over the last 120 years, human longevity has increased by 41 years. So we live 41 years longer on average than we did a century ago. 4 million years prior to that saw a 12-year increase in life expectancy. So the impact of science, of research and development, of knowledge, and of modern medicine has had a huge impact on humanity as we see it today. But the benefits of that progress are not evenly distributed, and billions of people are left behind, as you say, are forgotten. And the progress that we have made has stalled already, and that progress is fragile, and that progress is reversible. And it's reversible because a number of threats, clearly climate change, antimicrobial resistance, lack of investment, just neglect of leaving behind. So what got us to the point of here is not going to get us to the future. Let me just finish with one quick example. In Pakistan in 2022, there were devastating floods. It submerged 1/3 of the country. It killed almost 2,000 people. It made over 2 million people homeless. And the number of malaria cases increased by 50%, an extra 1 million cases of malaria because of that. So we're seeing the effects of this every day.
And again, you know, just as you referred to the floods there, that itself is devastating. But it's the damage it leaves behind, maybe, that's the silent damage that nobody's paying attention to as well, that we need to be looking at. Nassar, come in here and talk to us. You know, we see the urgency, or we should see it maybe a little bit clearer, and, you know, the importance of getting it right. But there's still many obstacles to actually just getting this and making sure that we can eradicate some of these almost unnecessary diseases.
Absolutely. So maybe we'll start with some of these obstacles. And I think it's important to give the audience a bit more context and just to remind people that half of the world's population, and that's around 4 billion people, live with no or basic access to even the most rudimentary health services. And unfortunately, when you take that fact and you couple it with that these are the same communities that are on the front lines of climate change, we can very quickly see that it's an enormous concern. As Simon just shared, climate change is affecting disease patterns and increasing the risks of outbreaks. And I'm sorry to mention this word, but COVID-19 reminded us that...
Well, yes, it did. I mean, that's the reality. You're right.
Absolutely. It reminded us that diseases don't respect boundaries, and it's why really global health challenges require global solutions, and why it behooves us all to work together to address them. We know that the climate crisis is, in fact, a health crisis, and that the health of our planet and our health are intertwined. And while that's a huge challenge, I also think it's a generational opportunity for us. It means that climate mitigation in all its forms, whether that be cleaner energy or sustainable food systems, directly will affect human health. At Reaching the Last Mile, we also believe that the best defense against the effects of climate change are strong, resilient health systems. As Simon just mentioned, whether we look at the floods in Pakistan in 2022 or the fatal heat waves that we've seen from Bangladesh to across the world is that the incidence of diseases spike up drastically when faced with some of these shocks. And I mean, to probably close, I would say that the way to address these is really to invest in resilience across all its forms, as we heard from the President earlier on. Investing in resilience helps ensure that healthcare remains available to everyone, even vulnerable communities, in the face of climate shocks.
Simon, come back to that. You know, obviously, vulnerable communities are where we have to look at, because I think in the developed world, we sometimes don't see it, and maybe we turned a blind eye to it. Nassar just mentioned there, as he said, the climate crisis is a health crisis. And, you know, because it's not, you know, in our face every day, I suppose, and it's not making headlines, that's the other danger. The media probably needs to pay a bit more attention. You know, what can we really do, or what is being done to actually help, I suppose, elevate the problem to a point where we see it and we're maybe disgusted enough to actually take action and do something? Because I think that's what's lacking sometimes.
So I think we have a real challenge, and at risk of preaching to the choir. I mean, sometimes it's about finding different audiences and making compelling arguments, and being prepared to listen to counter arguments and figure that through. And I don't think we've been particularly good at that. As I say, I think there has been great progress. There's been great international investment in global health. That has stalled, and we've seen the progress that has yielded. Nassar reminds us of COVID-19. Parasites, mosquitoes, diseases don't carry passports, don't respect boundaries, and so my health is your health, and your health is my health, and our health is their health, and their health is our health. So we are in this together, although sometimes we don't naturally see that and think that. So I think what does need to happen, I do think we have some political headwinds, and we have these technological tailwinds behind us, and we need to sort of change the balance and think about that technology. But I think about investment, and I think about the climate activists and the energy transition specialists that we have here, and I think about nationally determined contributions. And do you know that less than 1% of nationally determined contributions is invested in health? And we have to integrate our health expenditure, our education expenditure, our energy expenditure, and our sustainability transition expenditures together. So I think we need more visibility for health than we have right now.
You know, I think in all of the panels, we like to talk about sort of initiatives and investment. But sadly, sometimes when it comes to health, we're actually really looking at deaths, real life, you know, the situation, and the dollars. And, you know, the people lost, the dollars lost. Nassar, talk to me here. The World Health Organization is saying that by 2050, that just the cost of health related diseases is going to be about more than $12 trillion. And we're probably going to be looking at 15 million deaths. These are staggering figures that shouldn't have to happen. Again, come back to it. How do you think we can get access to healthcare, you know, particularly for people when it is related to climate change?
I mean, the simple answer, I think, is that we need to ensure that health is at the heart of the global climate agenda. And that's the only way that we will ensure that it receives the focus and financing it requires. And to point to how that works, I think a good example was during COP28, where it was the first time that we saw a dedicated health day as part of COP. And that produced the first declaration on climate and health, which was endorsed by over 144 countries.
And that will likely continue. So the fact it started here was very important.
We're happy that we played part in that legacy. But more tangibly, I think, it mobilized $1 billion in climate health financing.
Yes.
Now, COP28 also made 2 points very clear to all of us. One is that we need more funding. Health still only attracts a fraction of overall climate funding. And it's even more difficult for communities at risk to access that finance. Second, I think, and this is maybe an inconvenient truth to many of us, but we still need data. We don't really know enough about how climate change affects health, or what interventions we should prioritize to have the most impact in a resource-constrained environment. At reaching the last mile, we know that philanthropic capital does have the distinct ability, though, to move quickly and take a bit more risks, and then crowd in other actors once we're able to demonstrate success. So over the course of the last couple of years or so, we've been working on investing in building that database. Just over the course of the next couple of weeks, alongside our colleagues at the Rockefeller Foundation and Foundation S, we'll be launching a landmark analysis of climate health financing to really help direct and shape global priorities when it comes to that nexus. In parallel, we're also working, you mentioned earlier the WHO, we're working with them to better understand how changing weather data patterns affect diseases like malaria. To simplify, I think through all of this, we can understand how to safeguard better global health progress. We need to make sure that the gains we've already made, we can sustain them. And we need to make sure that we're able to promote a more equitable access going forward.
Yeah, because progress has been made, and for what you're doing at reaching the last mile, and you should all look at reaching the last mile. It's very, very impressive indeed to see the work that you are doing. So more work like this is absolutely to be encouraged. Simon, briefly touch on technology for me, because this is a conference where I think we started off with the possibilities of AI and technology and how everything is just moving at such a fast rate. Surely technology should be able to help us on the health side as well.
It plays a massive role already. We heard President Kagame yesterday talking about Zipline, this drone technology for moving blood samples and medicines. There's a saying in global health, which is if you stand still, you go backwards. Because if you stand still, the microbes evolve, you get resistance. So we have to have this constant race with pathogens. We, for our own Falcon Awards, have supported some drone mapping of breeding sites for mosquitoes in Peru. It's happening in Malawi. It's happening in Zanzibar. Drones are being used for spraying. We have new vaccines. We have new medicines. AI helping with the discovery of molecules, shortcutting the circuit from discovery to research and development of new therapies, genetic modifications of mosquitoes. So technology is at the heart of the progress. It has been over that last 120 years that has got us here, and it's clearly going to be a huge part of taking us to through the next century.
And Nassar, technology can't be just in this country or in the developed world. That has to be shared, but that comes down to international cooperation, because this is a global problem. We need somehow to find a global solution, don't we?
Absolutely, and I think the challenge is that climate change and human health are not something that we can solve all alone, as we clearly understand. And we, as a community, need a shared blueprint for action that's driven by the needs of countries on the forefront. I think it's through the knowledge and expertise that we will learn, then we can really develop the technologies that we really require. And to offer just an example of that, we at Reaching the Last Mile have been privileged to work with our colleagues at G42 and the Mohammed bin Zayed University for AI in many sort of issues that hopefully will drive progress using technologies.
So you're bringing in the best expertise in there as well.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe I'll offer one example. We're working on a program called Forecasting Healthy Futures with as well Malaria No More and the university, which basically harnesses AI technology and weather data to find ways to combat climate change. And one of the projects is actually a digital toolkit that helps countries predict better and stop malaria outbreaks before they even happen. We started a pilot program in Odisha state in India, where the toolkit, as well combined with other interventions, we all know there's no one silver bullet, has reduced malaria incidence in 81% in that region. But beyond global health, I think the UAE has done a lot in demonstrating the role of technology, whether we're talking about AI-led agricultural innovation, or companies like Altera. The UAE is showing that just as the challenge of climate change is increasing, so are the potential solutions.
And we have to wrap it up. Nassar, stay with us and just give us, I suppose, a closing, if there was a call to action for what people can do. Because there's a lot that we need to do in the future, but actually we need to also, move fast on this. What would you want that to be?
Sure. So I think, to wrap up, I would just like to reiterate the message that the climate change is the defining health challenge of our time. They're not separate issues, they're one. It's not a future threat, it's one that we face today. But the extent of which current and future generations will be impacted are basically on what we decide collectively to do. we can change the trajectory of that through investments, actions, and partnerships we create together. And I think it's very important that we don't take solutions that are conceived in the global north and impose them on the global south. We need to work together and really address these issues collectively.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I think we have to just think a little bit wider. I'll leave you the closing word on this one, Simon. Again, what needs to be done fast? What do you see? You've been in this business and watching this, and seeing it evolve around the world for a long time. What can we really do? What's necessary?
So I think we keep doing a lot of what we're doing. I mean, on technology, I did want to give you that example of, we've recently witnessed the passing of former President Jimmy Carter. His relationship with the founding father of this country and what they did in guinea worm is amazing. 3.5 million cases to 7 last year with no massive technology, but innovations, a little bamboo drinking straw. So human ingenuity. I'd finish off with where you started, people. Put people at the center of this and put vulnerable communities at the center of this and make them part of the planning process and design process for better health, for their community, for their countries, for their regions, and for our planet.
Thank you for that. And again, I mean, I think it brings it back down to, the health of the people is the wealth of the people or the wealth of the nations, and it moves to the economic progress. If we don't get that right, sadly, nothing's going to work. We have to look at ourselves, look at our neighbors, look at our colleagues and people right around the world and make sure that we make it work. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Nassar Al-Mubarak, thank you for joining us from Reaching the Last Mile, and Simon Bland. Again, both of you, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thanks for putting this in perspective with us.
Thank you.
I'll hand back to Charlotte.
Many thanks, Etna, to you and to your guests for a fantastic panel on what needs to happen to change healthcare. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next discussion delves into transforming food systems for future generations, where we explore how to revolutionize food production while protecting our planet's future. Please welcome Hassan Ghazali and our expert speakers. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very interesting session on transforming food systems. I'm sure we are all hungry for change, and it is my honor to have a very distinguished panel before you. I've got Isabel Toledano-Kotsouris from Ithaca Capital Partners. I've got Satya Tripathi, the Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet, and I've got Hisham Yahya, Sustainability Director at Fertiglobe. So time is short, much to talk about. We'll get right into it. Start with you, Satya. Through your work at the United Nations and GASP, paint a picture for us. What's wrong with the food systems, and what does the future look like if we don't get things right?
Thank you. I think what is wrong was right actually a few decades ago. When we started the Green Revolution, we started using the nitrates, the phosphates, and the phosphorus. It was all good, We got a serious bump in food production, and we were all happy that the entire global population can be fed happily. What has happened is that humanity can never have enough of anything. So we overused the fertilizers and the pesticides, and normally if you want to have a healthy agricultural system, your soil organic carbon should be 3%. And it was in the 60s and the 70s when we got off into the so-called Green Revolution. Now it is under 0.5% in most parts of the world, so that we can't actually grow anything anymore without pumping all kinds of chemicals that get us the cancers and all kinds of incurable diseases. So that's the big public health challenge that we were just talking about right now. The other problem is that it has become unremunerative. The world has about 1 billion smallholders that actually have about less than a hectare of land to cultivate, and they simply can't get enough either productivity or economic returns because we keep spending so much to get so little. So it's an economic crisis, it's a public health crisis, and it is a food system crisis. How do you feed the population? Thank you, Hassan.
Very good. Thank you for that roundup. I think it's interesting because we've got a fertilizer company here with us. We'll hear very soon from Hisham. So, okay, fine. So, yes, there is a massive contribution to emissions. What strategies, Satya, do you think are necessary to decarbonize agriculture?
Well, I think we need to do 5 things very quickly. The first is that wherever possible, to find the best possible use for fertilizers and pesticides. Minimize them as much as you can. And it is already evident in many parts of the world that are doing precision agriculture. You can actually drop it to about 20% of the current use levels. So that's the first. The second is that there's also organic farming, which is expensive for poor people, and it hasn't clearly worked the way it should have, because organic started as a movement about 50 years ago. It hasn't really taken off beyond 1% of the cropland on the planet. So that hasn't worked. There's a great movement that is currently gathering accelerated speed, which is called natural farming or regenerative agriculture, where the input costs drop by as much as 80% because they're not using compost or organic fertilizers as we know. They're using bioinoculation or using agroforestry, using trees on the margins of farms. We, in my organization, we have supported a program in India, which is now the world's largest regenerative agriculture program. 1 million women farmers have actually converted to natural farming. A few months ago, they won the Gulbenkian Prize for Humanity, which is by a €1 million prize, which was awarded by a jury led by Angela Merkel, the former German Chancellor, and the planetary boundaries guru, Johann Rockstrom, is a member of the jury. So it's kind of coming together, but it has to really grow faster. The fourth thing is that we need to find the resources, because the financial world speaks a language that the natural world doesn't understand, and vice versa. How do you find those interpreters that can get the tremendous existential benefits for humanity that comes out of these kind of ideas, nature-based solutions, and then bring it to the financial world and get them to understand that if that world collapses, you don't have a world at all. So you need to find a way to meet halfway.
Very good.
And so that's the fourth thing. And fifth is build virtuous partnerships so that people and ideas and resources can all come together in a way that makes the impossible possible. Impossible is all in the state of mind. What we think is impossible is not necessarily impossible. As we come together, we'll realize that the picture changes radically, and we can actually do things that we thought was not possible at all. So these are the 5 things I would say.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Satya. And we'll be coming to the financials very soon with Isabel. But I'd like to turn to you, Hisham. I think he's gone for the jugular quite a bit on fertilizers. Let's hear from you. How do you see the role of fertilizers evolving? And when you balance off environmental sustainability?
Yeah, for sure. And let me continue as well to what had been said now, because we see that the population growth is expected to be around 10 billion by 2050. So if we look only for the food demand, this would require that there's a 60% additional production in terms of the agriculture. So as my colleague said, there are several techniques that we can reach and enhance our fertilizer application to increase the yield, but at the same time to maintain a reduced emissions. So it's more environmental friendly. So if we take a quick look into, let's say, a sustainable intensification, right? As said, there is a precision farming techniques that can be followed. Our nitrogen fertilizers is necessary to continue the security of the food supply. So what we are doing now is that we are introducing enhanced efficiency techniques and treatments to enhance our nitrogen fertilizers to reduce the emissions at the farmland, but at the same time to increase the production of the crop itself. There are other techniques like the 4 Rs, where you are required to put the right fertilizers at the right time in the right place, and so on. Yeah? But most importantly, from a perspective of a producer, is that the introduction of the low-carbon ammonia into the production of the fertilizer itself. This will tremendously reduce the emissions, and ensure that you are producing more with less emissions. So in Fertiglobe, and I will not be lengthy, we introduced already the production of renewable ammonia and low-carbon ammonia from CCS. This means that you are consuming less gas but you're producing more fertilizers, which automatically feeds into the food security issue.
Okay, very good. That's good, because I was about to ask you what strategies are being employed at Fertiglobe. So that's a good indication. So now let's talk about finance, because you need money to do all this, whether you're doing operational work, whether you need to support farmers. So first, Satya, let me put a question to you, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is it true we need to focus less on financial innovation, developing new products and instruments, and use existing tools and deploy them innovatively? What's your view on that?
Well, I think, I used to be the Assistant Secretary General of the UN, responsible for environment and the financial issues within that ambit. And what I have seen, and we have these principles of responsible banking, principles of responsible investment, Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, ZFANs, and now a lot of US financial institutions are walking away from it because they are worried about the political fallout of a Trump presidency. But I think the fundamental problem is somewhere else. We are talking too much about changing finance, which is all these conversations are, then financing change. That requires courage. That requires to step up to the plate. That requires to believe in what we keep talking in conferences and committees and meetings and gatherings, is that even if it is 1% or 2% of the money you are deploying, would you take the risk to really step up to the plate and do something that you wouldn't normally do in terms of the normal financial metrics? Now, what I mean by that is that, let's take the case of the pension industry in the world. If you take just the top 300 pension funds in the world, forget there are thousands, I'm just talking the top 300, they manage $18 trillion in assets. If they put aside 1% of that for investments into nature-based solutions, we're talking $180 billion being freed up as blended finance, as first loss guarantees, and that could really change the landscape of resources available for supporting nature-based solutions. So I think we need to be brave. As I often say, paraphrasing a Spider-Man quote, that with great wealth comes great responsibility. So let's be responsible with all the great wealth we have, because this is a room full of people that really have either wealth or access to wealth that can be deployed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. So, Isabel, let me turn to you, because I want to stay on this theme of finance. Now, what's the role, or how do you see these macroeconomic factors, cost of living, inflation, how would they affect your view on investment in sustainable food systems?
Thank you, Hassan. So let me step back and maybe take a focus more on sort of food tech and agro-tech as opposed to maybe more traditional food system. And clearly, the macro environment in the last couple of years has acted as a perfect storm for all these companies, hitting them from rising costs to basically shortage of capital, and also catching them at the time that they were really trying to scale up, with a non-proven business model at the time, and then getting the costs straight in their face. So what that created is basically a big drop in valuation for a lot of these companies. And while counterintuitively, a lot of people in this room will recognize that there is urgency and we need to act and everybody's committed to it, basically the belief in the sector being able to do something has sort of faded. And it's been very hard to attract talent as a result of it also, and more innovation. So that's something else that I think is quite critical in order for the sector to keep inventing themselves. We need to be a resilient sector so that the innovator of tomorrow are attracted to do it. But I'll pause there because I could carry on. And I know you want to ask me more about capital in general, so I can dive into that directly.
I'd actually, because we're short on time, I'd really like to ask you about innovation. So given the pace of innovation, how do you balance innovation and cost competitiveness? And what I really want to know, you as an investor, what kind of areas are out there in the food sector which you would invest in, and more importantly, where you wouldn't invest in?
So let me go back to the role of capital for a minute, and then I'll tell you what we're looking at. So I think what is important, we all know that private capital, and to your point, is critical in funding innovation. What we've seen is a very fragmented capital scene. So the early stage company find VC investors, and that's great. And then the later stage company, if they get there, find sort of PE money and growth And in the middle, you have that valley of death, which is a big problem because we all know that these companies take longer to scale and require more capital. So here, there is something that needs to be fixed. We also need more specialized investors, right? People who understand the risk inherent to this sector. And I think in there's also a role for corporate VC to play because we have operational dynamics that need to be taken into account that are very different than for any general investors. So that needs to be addressed as well. And it's education. So then once you've said all of that, I think there's been a new paradigm for the agri-food system, which is more disciplined execution, which is much better valuation, because you will all have seen that valuation have dropped 40 to 60% in the last 2-3 years. And it's smarter scaling as opposed to scaling at any cost. And by smarter scaling, you want to demonstrate unit economics. So then I'll answer your question is, what do we look at? We look at people who address a real problem that is scalable, and by scalable, it means we do not just targeting a niche. So for your business model to work, it's not about selling at high price to some sort of niche customer. It's looking at local problem solving. So I give you an example. One of the company we're working with is called Better Origin, and they're solving the food waste issue in the UK. You cannot export food waste, right? So you have to solve it locally. So I think solving local problems, solving big scale problem, and solving real problem. And we would only look at businesses that actually have demonstrated unit economics. It doesn't have to be at massive scale, but that you can show that it works.
Okay, very good. So if I was you, where should I put my money? And where should I not put my money? Very quickly.
I think you should definitely look at the sector because it presents a lot of opportunity. And then within the sector, I would say look at steady cash flow, so greenhouse housing, new proteins would be sectors.
Should I put my money in vertical farming? Yes or no?
Not in every vertical farm, but yes.
Be careful about it.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So we roughly towards the end of our time, I'm going to go into a rapid fire. So very quickly, because we are talking about the nexus of next here at ADSW. What do you see as the biggest breakthrough in the coming years that could transform global food systems? First, we'll have Isabel.
So I'm very excited to see the impact AI is going to have on our food system because we see what it does to a lot of sectors. And I start seeing the premises on agriculture, and I'm very excited about that.
AI. Over to you, Satya. Biggest breakthrough.
Carbon has to find the right price because poor people are ready to make the climate transition, provided you can unburden the cost of the transition. Then they will do everything you need because a problem created by 8 billion people is not going to be solved by a few governments and a few corporations.
Very good.
Everybody has to step up and make the right thing happen. But for that, we have to unburden them. We can't expect them to pay for the transition.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. And finally, Hassam.
So the time is up, so yes. I will say both AI, carbon pricing.
Carbon pricing.
Yeah, and strict regulations that allows.
Okay, very good. We'll talk about that more backstage. We're here, folks. Please find us. We can talk more. Thank you so much to my panelists. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm round of applause for my panel. Thank you.
Many thanks to all of you for a very engaging panel indeed on food systems. Thank you very much. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next discussion will look at the various ways we can leverage and model climate risk. Our moderator will be Amal, and she will introduce our speakers. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. We used to say that the devil is in the detail, but let me tell you, now the devil is in the data. And to put this in perspective, every day we generate 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. And if that doesn't mean much to you, you just add 18 zeros. To put this into perspective, it is the equivalent of 250,000 libraries of Congress worth of data being created every single day. Yet only a fraction of this amount, of this immense resource, is used to address climate change. By 2030, climate risks could wipe out up to 4% of global GDP. And we don't want that. And that's exactly why we have this panel, to talk about big data, big impact. Let me introduce our fantastic lineup of speakers. So we have Antoine Huff, principal at Kairos, Anand Verma, founder and CEO of Expect AI. And by the way, I love the name of the company, Expect AI. Scott Pearl, principal at Global Infrastructure Partners, and Aaron Pinnock, climate integration lead at Mubadala. So welcome, everybody. Delighted to have you with us here. Antoine, I will start with you, if that's okay, just to set the stage. How can we improve the standardization, accessibility, and interoperability of climate data from various resources, and how can we incorporate it into decision-making as well?
Okay, great questions. Well, I think the first thing to do is we need to recognize that data are absolutely foundational to climate action. We cannot achieve our climate goals without detailed information, detailed measurements, trusted data that we can feel comfortable with and that we can use for action. You can't manage what you can't measure. For a long time, we knew about the problem of climate warming, but we couldn't do anything about it for lack of data. The good news is we now have a proliferation of data from AI, from satellite imaging, from remote sensing, from geolocation data, from all kinds of sources, and that's great. The problem today is no longer the accessibility of data, the availability of data. It's, the problem is to manage the proliferation of data. We're almost at the point where our success in our ability to generate data about climate, about the climate footprint, greenhouse gas emissions, climate risks, the energy transition, risks becoming a victim of its own success because there's so much data out there, some of which might seem conflicting or give the appearance of being conflicting. So there's indeed a need for standardization, and there's a need for integration of the data with the workflows. Standardization, I think, is a key issue, and to reconcile potentially conflicting data, to harmonize data, to make sure we speak the same language, we compare apples and apples. I think the challenge of standardization is very different depending on what we measure, what kind of data we're talking about. On a scale of 1 to 5, carbon is probably a 1. It's probably very easy. We all understand what carbon emissions are. We know where they come from. They're a direct byproduct of using fossil fuels. There's no big question there. Methane emissions, more complicated, invisible, not linked to consumption, really an accident of production of oil and gas, also agriculture, waste, much more difficult to measure. There's a lot of effort underway right now to standardize data, led by NIST, the US National Institute for Standardization and Technology, I think. The UK Space Agency, a few others. We are, in our company, we participate in this effort. It's moving ahead. Nature-based solutions, forestry project, that's much more complicated. It's probably a 5. Because of the inherent complexity of these projects. Assessing the additionality of a project is different because it entails assumptions about the counterfactuals, what will happen if the projects did not exist. And each project is very different by virtue of, each forest is different, each parcel of the forest is different. So that's probably a 5, and the market is trying to sort this out. It's going to take some time for the market really to find a solution. Integrating the data inside companies, in workflows, in work processes, that's also an issue. And I think more and more in our company, we not only provide data to our customers, but we help them integrate the data into their workflows, into their data management systems. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution for this. It's really case by case. It really depends on the specifics of the companies, of their data management systems, of what they do, of the nature of their needs. And we really work case by case with large customers to help them integrate data into their workflows, their processes. For small and medium companies, it's a little bit more complicated, and I think Anand is going to say something about this. But we can also do it because their needs are also, and their systems are also simpler. So the amount of advisory services they need to manage this is also a little bit lighter and easier to take.
Thank you very much, Antoine. And you can see that we have spoken actually before this. So he's already asking Anand the next question. So Anand, just to confirm and bring the money discussion into this, and specifically for SMEs with limited resources as well. So how can we bridge the climate finance gap? And how can big data and AI be leveraged to mobilize climate finance?
Thank you so much, Amal. It's great to be here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I think the discussion is a really interesting one here. There are 330 million SMEs in the world. And if I can give you the number, 91% are yet to even think about climate strategy within their business. And the reason behind that is they're underserved, they're underfinanced, and they don't have the resources or knowledge or access to expensive consultants to take those actions. Now, if I give another picture to everyone in the room here, 60% of the total emissions come from SMEs, and they're completely overlooked. So how do we mobilize this, right? So my thesis is that it has to be, sustainability doesn't need to be a sacrifice for them. It needs to be incentivized, and it needs to be profitable. So the term that I want to coin today is profitable sustainability action in the room here. And that can only happen if we're able to invest those financial dollars into their CapEx actions. What I mean by CapEx is if SME wants a solar panels on their roof and they can reduce their energy by 50%, that savings straight away goes to their bottom line, right? Now, when that happens, SME is a winner, and the financing part, company or business or bank, is also a winner in the process. Now, the other challenge to your next question, Amal, is AI, right? I'm so glad that I named my company Expect AI, and thanks for liking that. And
5 years ago, so you were like,
5 years
before
ago.
it became a thing.
Exactly, but at that point, AI for me was a machine learning and pattern matching and finding insights. Today, because of everything that's happened with AI and what Dr. Sultan mentioned Nexus of Next yesterday, I believe that AI has the ability to target 330 million businesses. Without AI, it's impossible, right? So how do you give personal recommendations to these businesses that enables them to take profitable climate action? Because unless we do that, I don't think we'll reach the goals that we have highlighted in yesterday's speech as well. And that's where I think AI can be a force for good, not what just the energy-consuming technology issue. So I'm excited. You can see that I'm super excited about AI.
I can see that.
And without data, and without good data, AI is nothing, right? So that's where I feel that AI can be a major contributor to our success over the years to come.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I really like, the emphasis on aligning, sustainability goals with the business strategy.
Right.
They shouldn't compete, they should align.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Now, Scott, if I can come to you and bring the discussion about infrastructure. So infrastructure accounts for a significant share of transition investments. How do asset incentive businesses leverage AI and big data to reduce emissions?
We think that, just to touch on your infrastructure point, we think about half of the $100+ trillion that is needed to rework the global economy for decarbonization is going to come from infrastructure investments. So it's absolutely critical to achieving those objectives. We're about $170 billion dedicated infrastructure asset manager. We have a team of about 50 people focused from a top-down perspective, from a long-term perspective, how to drive decarbonization in these businesses. We put them through what we call a master framework. You have to measure, you have to set targets based upon what you've measured. You need to track your performance and then have accountability and report that performance. We do that across our companies that have $70 billion in revenue and 115,000 employees. And taking that long-term view has enabled us to already notch some meaningful wins. When we think about our airports business, which has 100 million passengers a year passing through it, we have been able to use machine learning and AI to adjust the energy usage of the buildings at, for example, at Gatwick Airport to time when passengers are at peak demand and at lower levels of demand. we've been able to generate a 20% savings in energy usage, and that's dropped through to the bottom line. For methane emissions, we're a large owner of pipelines, and we're employing satellite data, drone data, putting that through analytics and AI to predict and repair and get ahead of those very harmful methane emissions. On renewable power, we're a large owner, 20 gigawatts plus of renewable power globally. We have, through our team, built our own tools to capture the substantial data that comes from wind generation to produce more energy and to get ahead of predictive maintenance. And maybe bringing it back to the point about how do we take all this data and put it through the tools that are available, really critical to have that top-down mentality to drive awareness in the organization, because a lot of these that I just went through are low-hanging fruit. You would do them anyway if you knew that they existed, because it saves you money. The next set of challenges, which we'll get into, really relate to those climate-saving actions, which maybe don't necessarily pay for themselves in immediate savings, but when you count the cost of carbon on the world and on the economy, you have to factor that into your considerations and build that into your decision-making.
Thank you very much, Scott. And that's very concrete, example of how we can make sense of this huge amount of data, harnessing technology and AI. Aaron, if I may come to you now and talk about the frameworks that can enable us actually to accelerate, sharing data. So in terms of policy, what policies can we put in place to incentivize companies to share data, especially when we talk also about confidentiality, which some companies are obviously worried about?
Sure. So I think clear policy is absolutely crucial to what we're trying to do in the sustainability space. To have that clear articulated policy and a policy guidance and landscape, it's second to none. And I think to Antoine's point earlier, I think 5 to 10 years ago, we were in the space of a bit of a, where's the data? We need more data. We were crying out to policymakers, we need this policy to be able to give data, to be able to integrate into our systems. And I think now we're at an inflection point. You've got SFDR coming into Europe, you've got IFRS S1 and S2, which is following the TCFD. You've got all this alphabet soup stuff. I'm not sure if we have all the data that we need, but we're certainly at that inflection point to be able to put it into our systems. Another example as well on the policy side of things, which is maybe not the most great thing to talk about, but I think it really does help to drive the agenda, is, for example, CBAM, so the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is now putting a price on carbon, or will do next year, on certain goods that come into the EU. That policy is now having a global effect, where you're starting to see a proliferation of carbon markets throughout the world. And one of the, going back to the policy parts of things, one of the things that's coming in the UAE is an edict on companies that are emitting over 500,000 tons of Scope 1 and 2 emissions to start reporting, assuring those types of emissions. So I think the policy scene is really crucial, and having these international kind of guidelines like CBAM which drive global markets is really empowering. The other thing that I would say is to Anand's point about SMEs really resonated. Mubashir is, as many of you know, is one of the sovereign wealth funds in the UAE. We're in a really privileged position where we have a national portfolio and an international portfolio. And one of the work streams that we ran last year is a project that we call Project Decarb, where we went out to a number of UAE-based portfolio companies and effectively said, we want to take you on your decarbonisation journey. So we measured, or with the support of consultants, we helped them measure their carbon footprint for the first time. We did energy audits of their operations, and we identified ways that we could improve the energy efficiency of their operations, which would realise not only greenhouse gas emission savings, but also, to your point, profitability. And it was an amazing outcome. These are companies that are predominantly SMEs, so they haven't focused on carbon too much because they don't have the expertise or the resource or whatever. But what we found in our study was over 70% of the energy audit initiatives that we identified were actually profitable. So it's low-hanging fruit that so many of these companies can action, and with the help of more data, bigger data, we can hopefully move from the getting into the nuts and bolts with the consultants. There is obviously a place for consultants to play, but use the data to enhance the insights.
Can I come in just for
Of
10
course,
seconds, Amol? So I'll just give you some stats. There are three metrics that we're tracking. One is carbon saving. That's what we've been tracking for a long time. The second metric I encourage everybody to think about is the money saved or value gained, right? And the third one, which I'm really kind of interested in, is productivity gain. And with AI, productivity gain is one of the key metrics to use in taking decisions faster, which means that you're taking actions faster as well. So I just wanted to add to.
No, thank you very much for that. And I think we like good news. So I think this feels like, because generally we talk about the challenge side of things, but these are examples that, give us also hope that actually, when you look closer, there are a lot of solutions and use cases that could accelerate, progress. So thank you for that. Scott, if I may come back to you and look into the energy and utility sector. I mean, they are highly regulated, and Aaron actually mentioned, a number of acronyms. I hope you are not completely lost in like a TCFD, TNFD, CBAM, and the like. But in these sectors that are highly regulated, how can we actually help industries to collaborate around the data?
Well, I'll mention another acronym, which is the SEC. That's the U.S. financial regulatory body. And we're seeing with, as you're well aware, administration change in the U.S., some potential regulatory volatility around what our data reporting requirements are going to be in the U.S. That challenge is compounded by the fact that the electrification of the economy runs through utilities. And utilities, for example, in the U.S., there's 100 utility companies, there's 50 different states. They all have their own policy, their own rate design. It makes it more challenging to, even if you have the data and you have tools to inform your actions, if you don't have a utility rate design that allows you to, for example, reduce your energy usage at the time of day when everybody else is using their energy, you can't necessarily generate the carbon savings and the cost savings that you're otherwise intended. That places an additional burden on the industry to come together through collaborative organizations. It also places additional burden on owners like us of these companies to try to drive top-down action to measure this data and implement it into your actions, not just because it saves money, but also taking the long view, understanding that we're all going to have to do this over time. There's been enough momentum built up in the US that we're cautiously optimistic that certainly large companies will move forward, for example, with methane reduction activities, even if this administration comes in and relaxes those regulations that the industry had been relying upon to make the investments to start implementing this change.
Thank you very much, Scott. And I must say, like, technology is great when it works. I noticed that behind us, the screens are gone. Hopefully, they will come back very soon. But Antoine, what kind of incentives actually can we offer businesses to encourage them to share data?
So to share data, I guess sharing means disclosure, transparency. There's a lot of companies that report their emissions. The interesting thing is we don't really need them to take the initiative to share data to have some insights about their emissions. We can monitor independently a lot of what they do. And the more we find out about their emissions independently, the more we see a disconnect, a gap between reported emissions and observed emissions. And the reason why that's the case is not because companies or even countries are bad people or want to hide their wrongdoing. It's because sometimes they use emission factors that are recognized as a valid way of reporting by the UNFCCC, but that we know are obsolete and inadequate and vastly understate emissions. Or it can be also because they're disincentivized from being transparent. In the case of methane emissions in the US, for example, there's new regulations which are great, a big milestone in methane abatement, but at the same time, I'm not sure they provide the real right incentives for people to come clean. In fact, if you're emitting methane and you report your emissions, you're liable to have penalties, fines, you look bad compared to your competitors who might not be as transparent and might emit more but not say anything about it. So you have a disincentive to use the best technologies and to be transparent. So I think we need to overcome this. But there's some good news, and I think we've seen a lot of progress. And I would single out 5 maybe factors that are really pushing things in the right direction. One is public pressure, civil society. The transparency from satellite monitoring is creating publicity around some of the most egregious emissions. And we've seen the example of Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, where we saw massive emissions of methane in the last few years. A lot of media information about this, kind of a scandal issue, and that has led to diplomatic pressure for those governments to come clean and these countries have signed on and are completely transforming their performance. Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan joined the Global Methane Pledge. They took real measures to reduce emissions. We see massive progress, and actually Turkmenistan dramatically reduced their emissions in 2023, when most countries around the world did not reduce or even increase their emissions. The other thing is investors. Investors do a lot to put pressure on their portfolio companies to come clean, and they have their own ESG targets, so they have an incentive themselves to put pressure on their portfolio companies to improve their reporting. End users, we work, for example, with ENGIE in France, which imports LNG. ENGIE has a natural interest in finding out how much associated methane emissions are importing. So that's another source of pressure. Best-in-class peers. And here, this region, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, are probably best-in-class in methane emissions, along with Norway. And they have a real leadership role to play in getting the rest of the industry, oil and gas in particular, to come to the same standards, to come to the same level of performance. And then regulations, and I think regulations need to evolve. The first round of regulations that we've seen in Europe and in the US and other countries are great, but that's the V1. We might see a V2 that's going to be more effective. And there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen in the US with the change of government, whether there's going to be some backsliding in methane regulations. I think we could actually see progress, and methane regulations could go very well with tariffs. Trade policy could be a very powerful tool to get global emissions to come down. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Antoine. I think I will give each of you 30 seconds to just, we have like different, organizations represented on the panel. What are you most looking forward to? And if there is a call to action that you want to leave our audience with. Aaron, I will start with you.
I think for me, I'm looking forward to moving away from sustainability in terms of the ESG and the old way of looking at sustainability, which I think is a large part of the backlash that you're seeing against ESG, or whatever you want to call it, into moving, and I think Anand put it really well, sustainability and profitability. We need to put sustainability into how we do business rather than putting business in how we do sustainability. And I think as an investor, that's what we're primarily focused on. There are 3 ways that Mubashir looks at how to integrate our climate strategy. One is investing into solutions, into the right solutions. So things like AI when done responsibly, renewable energy. Number 2 is engagement with our portfolio companies. So how do we engage with our portfolio companies to drive the right outcomes? And 3, convening partners and trying to make the infrastructure to meet the climate goals. And so those 3 things collaboratively, I think, are what we're really looking forward to as Mubashir going forward.
Thank you very much. Now, Anand, only 20 seconds,
only
because
20
we need to wrap up.
Thank you. So look, I think the takeaway is AI for good, right? It's democratized. And the stats that were being shared yesterday around how quickly 200 million users are using ChatGPT and other tools, we got to use that, embrace that, because that democratization and user experience can change the game for me. And sustainability is a task, a job to be done. Make it easier for the end user, things will happen and we'll achieve our goals.
Thank you very much for that. Antoine, very briefly.
Well, I think we've seen tremendous change and tremendous progress in our ability to monitor emissions, to monitor climate, and to track our climate footprint. Key thing is the data are good enough today to take action. We shouldn't wait for the perfect data to take action. The data, what we should do is try to make the best of existing data. Meanwhile, the data will continue to improve.
Yeah.
And we
so
need...
start where you are, regardless of the quality of the data. Thank you very much, Antoine. Scott?
2 quick points. One, top-down. Everybody in this room are leaders. There's awareness that needs to be driven throughout the organization to take advantage of this data and these tools to affect change. And then 2, take the long view. Yes, there will be volatility up and down in terms of people's attitude towards climate, but the direction of travel is clear. And if you keep your eye on the longer term, that'll help guide you.
Thank you very much. That's all we have the time for, unfortunately, but it's a really interesting topic. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our speakers here today.
Many thanks to all. Many thanks, Amal, and your wonderful guests. A very insightful conversation to understand how to leverage the mighty power of AI, big data, and analytics to enhance sustainability. Coming up next, we stay with tech and explore how the digital climate nexus is reshaping global investment patterns. How do we harness digital disruption to bridge the $5 trillion annual climate investment gap? Well, we're about to find out with our next guest. It's Dr. Parag Khanna, founder and CEO at Alpha Geo. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to him. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. We all know how enormous, seemingly insurmountable, the climate finance adaptation gap is. And what is so intimidating beyond that is how much larger the gap is for adaptation than for transition and mitigation. As many people know, the total percentage of capital committed to adaptation is less than 10% of total climate finance. So today we're going to talk about how to bridge that gap in particular. And the approaches that we take to that cannot be merely tax-based approaches or cap-and-trade-based approaches. Instead, the approach that needs to be taken for addressing the adaptation gap is CapX, not cap-and-trade, CapX. Why is that so essential? Well, let's look at what happens when we don't invest sufficiently in adaptation. Why climate volatility wreaks such havoc around the world. We have the immediate, material, visible, tragic reality of the vulnerability of at least 3 billion people in the world to physical climate risk. There is the mass migrations that already are resulting from this. This is not a future scenario. This is today's reality. According to the International Organization of Migration, at least 1/3 of internal and internationally displaced people are accounted for by climate change today, a much higher figure than before. Then the immediate material damage and impact, the mispricing of assets. People speak of a climate Minsky moment, the idea of a sudden collapse in asset values. I need only tragically to point to the tragic fires in California, for example, which is a reminder that climate volatility is geographically universal almost. It affects countries rich and poor. And when you add all of that up, of course, there is the erosion of our fundamental aggregate GDP, which, according to some studies, could be as much as 30% of GDP as we move towards 2050, 2060, and beyond. Just last week, I published a column in the Financial Times looking at India, one of the world's largest economies, the world's fastest growing large economy, but also one of the most climate-stressed countries in the world, and pointed out that the GDP forecasts made by the IMF, the World Bank, Standard & Poor's, and so forth, do not factor in physical climate risk in making those projections. But if you do a bottom-up analysis of the Indian economy, sector by sector, primary agriculture, secondary manufacturing and industry, tertiary services. And look at the population density, the distribution of people, the economic composition, the climate risk, and model it that way, you would come to the conclusion that India's GDP is not going to grow as rapidly as anticipated. We ascribe to the Indian economy a correction of about $500 billion over the next 5 to 6 years, which is plausible, realistic, and it is something that a large economy can absorb, but why should it? Why not instead invest more in adaptation? And this is the fundamental mantra of our firm, Alpha Geo. I would say we have two mottos. One, because we are complex systems analysts, we know that the past is a very poor guide to the future. In other words, you cannot think in purely linear terms. Climate has to be introduced as a new kind of variable that is disrupting our previous models and projections. And the second is what you see here, resilience. Risk minus adaptation equals resilience, something very formal. And resilience, the quest to measure what this word actually means on the ground, in reality, is what motivates us. Because it is the right word to use, but unless you put numbers, flesh and bones and meaning to it, it doesn't get taken as seriously as it needs to. So the measurement, the quantification of resilience is what we are all about, because that can translate into real investments in adaptation. How does it work? It starts as a domain of geospatial data science. We take climate models covering all of the principal physical climate hazards, flood, storm, heat, fire, drought, sea level rise, and so forth, and we downscale them to as granular a level as possible. And all of that granularity also has to be harmonized to a common resolution. That way, when you look at any place in the world, you can see each risk individually and the composite risk for that location. Now, that is just the risk side. What about the adaptation? You can't calculate your resilience unless you know how adapted you are. And we can talk about risk all the time. Measuring risk, whether it's, again, transition risk or physical risk, has become a major global service, but in a way commoditized. What is the value of adaptation interventions is the missing piece of analysis that we try to focus on. In other words, we're capturing and downscaling similar geospatial data about the presence of seawalls, flood control measures, surface porosity, flood control measures, fire stations, all kinds of physical investments, whether they're made by the public sector or the private sector, and scoring the effectiveness of that adaptation. And then you have your risk and you have your adaptation, then you can know the resilience of a place. And if you do, you then have a roadmap. You know what you need to invest in, where you need to invest in it, and when. And the when, of course, is yesterday for so many places that have been caught off guard. All of that has to go on a map. The reason is because in the asset management world or as investors, you don't just think about absolute performance, you also think about relative performance, right? How well or how resilient is one place versus another place? And that's going to shape how you invest, where you invest, and what you do to strengthen a place in order to meet global benchmarks, global standards, such as what we have depicted here. And so a heat map like this helps you develop these risk and resilience profiles. And you can aggregate this data from the level of a pixel to a village, to a town, to a city, to a province, or to an entire country or entire region of the world, and pinpoint where adaptations are going to have the most significant impact. And again, ultimately, this is about preserving economic value. It's also, of course, about preserving societal stability. Because at the end of the day, if we can create those incentives, again, not punitive incentives of taxation, but positive incentives to invest in adaptation, that is what is going to avoid some of those negative, pernicious externalities and downward spirals that I was describing at the beginning. We know, we don't need to be told anymore, that places that don't adapt are going to suffer the physical loss, economic loss, and have their economies debased and populations decline. What we need to focus on is the positive incentive to invest in adaptation, because if we do that, Places such as the UAE, of course, has done extraordinarily well, despite what, according to a climate model, looks like a very worrying climate profile. A country such as the UAE has made extraordinary investments in adaptation, and what has it seen as a result? It's attracted people, capital, and business. It's grown its economy much more than it otherwise would have, and it's delivered outsized financial returns. And that is the win-win positive impact that investing in adaptation can have. It boosts resilience, and it ultimately leads to a world in which, perhaps, despite all the complexity that confronts us, we can still keep on track towards our common goals. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khanna, for your expert insights. Very valuable indeed. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this morning. More panels this afternoon after the lunch break. We hope you will join us again this afternoon for more discussions addressing the key topics, including enabling the energy transition, the circular economy, and changing habits to move the sustainability needle and supercharge progress. We hope you enjoy your lunch, and we will see you back here at 1:30 p.m. sharp, please. Thank you very much for your attention this morning. Thank you.